If you have ever had the quiet feeling that you are behind on retirement, that somehow everyone else figured this out and you missed the memo, I have some news that is going to feel strange to hear. You are probably right that you are behind, but you are wrong about being alone, because the data shows that most Americans are in exactly the same place. Being behind on retirement is not the exception in this country. It is the norm. In 2025, Gallup found that 40% of American adults have no retirement savings at all. Not a little, nothing. A separate AARP survey found that 1 in 5 adults over 50, people getting genuinely close to retirement, have nothing set aside. The Federal Reserve found that 1 in 7 Americans has no retirement assets whatsoever. So if you feel behind, you are looking at a problem that is affecting tens of millions of people at the same time. And that matters because a problem this widespread is not just a story about individual willpower, it is a story about how the entire system changed underneath an entire generation. Let me show you what is actually happening, why it is happening, and what you can do about it. Quick thing before we get into it, if you find this useful, drop a comment below with your age and whether you feel ahead or behind. I read them, and it genuinely helps other people see they are not the only ones. Subscribe and hit like too if you want more of these. Now let's get into the numbers. The first thing you need to understand is that most of the retirement numbers you see online are lying to you. Not on purpose, but the way they are presented creates a completely false picture. Here's the trick. When you see a headline that says the average American has around $141,000 in their 401k, that number is technically true and deeply misleading, because the average is dragged upward by a small number of extremely wealthy savers. A handful of people with $2 or $3 million saved pull the whole average up and make everyone else feel like they are drowning. The number that actually tells you the truth is the median, the person right in the middle. And the median 401k balance in 2026 is around $38,000 to $44,000. The average is nearly 3 times the median. That gap is the proof. When the average is almost triple the middle person, it means the average is describing a small group at the top, not the typical person. So when you compare yourself to that $141,000 average and feel like a failure, you are comparing yourself to a number that does not represent almost anyone. Here's what the typical American actually has by age using median numbers. Under 35, the median is around $16,000. In your late 30s and 40s, around $40,000. By your mid-50s to early 60s, the years right before retirement, the median 401k balance is somewhere around $95,000 to $107,000. Let that land for a second. The typical American approaching retirement age has roughly $100,000 saved, and when you include all account types, the median total for households aged 55 to 64 is around $185,000. Now here's the expectation gap that makes this genuinely alarming. When Americans are asked how much they think they need to retire comfortably, the answer in a 2026 Northwestern Mutual survey was $1.46 million. Some surveys put the number even higher. So the typical near retiree has around $185,000 and believes they need $1.46 million. That is a gap of well over $1 million. This is the retirement crisis in one comparison. It is not that people do not know they need more, it is that the distance between where they are and where they need to be has become enormous. So why is this happening? Because this is where it stops being a story about individual failure and starts being a story about a system that changed. Structural cause, number 1, the death of the pension. 2 generations ago, retirement worked completely differently. You worked for a company for decades and that company promised you a defined monthly payment for the rest of your life after you retired. That was a pension. You did not have to calculate a withdrawal rate. You did not have to manage investments. You did not have to guess how long you would live. The company and its actuaries handled all of that risk. Then, over the last few decades, companies almost entirely replaced pensions with 401k plans. And this was a massive transfer of risk. The 401k moved the entire burden of funding retirement, the saving, the investing, the market risk, the longevity risk, all of it, off the company's balance sheet and onto the individual employee. Most people never got a memo saying you are now personally responsible for a problem that used to be handled for you. The system just quietly changed, and a lot of people are behind simply because they were never taught to run a system that did not exist when their parents retired. Structural cause number 2, the access gap. A 401k only works if you have one. And a huge number of American workers do not have access to any workplace retirement plan at all. If you work for a small business, gig work, contract work, or lower wage jobs, there is a strong chance no employer plan is offered to you. And when there is no automatic plan pulling money out of your paycheck before you see it, saving requires a level of manual discipline that most people, understandably, do not maintain year after year. Automation is what makes saving work. Millions of people never had access to that automation. Structural cause number 3, Paycheck to paycheck. Around a quarter of American households are living paycheck to paycheck according to Bank of America data. And among people who are already retired, 58% said they were living paycheck to paycheck before they retired. You cannot say what you do not have when housing, healthcare, food, and transportation consume the entire paycheck. Retirement saving becomes a theoretical luxury rather than a practical option. And costs in all four of those categories have risen faster than wages for years. This is not a willpower problem, it is a math problem for a huge number of families. Structural cause number 4, starting too late. Retirement saving runs entirely on compounding, the process where your investment returns generate their own returns over time. And compounding needs one thing above all else: time. Someone who starts saving at 25 needs to save far less each month than someone who starts at 45 to end up in the same place because the early saver's money has 20 extra years to multiply. The problem is that your 20s are usually when you have the least money and the least awareness that this matters. So a lot of people start seriously saving in their 40s, and by then, the most powerful decades of compounding are already gone. The math still works. It just requires much larger contributions to make up for lost time. Structural cause number 5, over-reliance on Social Security. When retirees were surveyed about their mistakes, 35% admitted they thought they would be able to live entirely on Social Security. And this is where a dangerous misunderstanding lives. Social Security was never designed to fully fund your retirement. It was designed to replace roughly 40% of your pre-retirement income for an average earner. The average Social Security benefit in 2026 is about $1,907 per month. That is roughly $22,884 per year. For most people, that covers a portion of retirement, not all of it. And there is a looming complication. The Social Security Retirement Trust Fund is projected to face a shortfall in the early 2030s if no changes are made, which could mean reduced benefits down the line unless Congress acts. This does not mean Social Security is disappearing, but it does mean building a retirement plan that assumes Social Security will cover. Everything is building on a foundation that was never meant to carry that much weight. So here's the part I want to be honest with you about. A lot of this is not your fault. The pension disappeared and nobody replaced the safety net. Many people never had access to a workplace plan. Costs rose faster than wages. The system quietly made every individual their own pension fund manager without teaching anyone how to do the job. And this is the part that matters. Even though it is not entirely your fault, it is still your responsibility, because no one else is going to fix this for you. The unfair part and the actionable part are both true at the same time. So what should you actually be aiming for? Here's a simple benchmark used by Fidelity that cuts through the noise. Aim to have 1 times your annual salary saved by 30, 3 times by 40, 6 times by 50, 8 times by 60, and 10 times your salary saved by 67. If you earn $60,000, that means roughly $60,000 saved by 30 and around $600,000 by 67. These are targets, not guarantees, but they give you a real yardstick that is far more useful than a scary $1 million headline. Now the good news, because there genuinely is some. For people who do save consistently, balances are actually at all-time highs. Fidelity found that people who saved continuously for 15 years averaged around $648,800. Consistency, not intensity, not perfect timing, not picking the right stocks, is what actually builds retirement wealth, and the system is slowly improving. In 2026, the 401k contribution limit rose to $24,500 for people under 50, with even larger catch-up amounts for people over 50, and a special super catch-up for ages 60 to 63. If you are behind, here's what actually moves the needle. First, if your employer offers any match, contribute at least enough to get the full match. That is an instant 100% return that most people leave on the table. Second, automate your contributions so saving happens before you can spend the money. Third, increase your contribution rate by just 1% each year. Small enough that you barely notice, large enough that it compounds dramatically over time. Fourth, if you have no workplace plan, open a Roth or traditional IRA on your own and automate it. Being behind is not a character flaw. It is the predictable result of a system that shifted an enormous responsibility onto individuals without much support. But the distance between behind and on track is closed the same way every time. Consistent contributions started as soon as possible, left alone to compound. You cannot go back and start in your 20s. But the second best time to start is the reason this video exists. It is today.